Today, we're doing some driveway upgrades to Jeep's Wrangler Unlimited. We're adding a long arm lift kit and bigger wheels and tires to make this Jeep more off-road capable. It's all today here on Trucks.
Hey guys, welcome to Trucks. Well, it's been a while since we had a Jeep in the shop. It's been even longer since we had a Jeep in the shop that had an actual frame underneath it. So that's why we picked up this 2005 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited to do sort of a mild build-up on. Now, we don't want to do anything too over the top, so we're not going to get into any crazy, complicated engine swaps, and we're probably going to give the welders and two benders a rest for a little while and make this more of a bolt-on project, kind of like a lot of you guys would do at home. Now, this is an Unlimited or LJ Wrangler, as opposed to the more widely available and common TJ Wrangler. Now, they're essentially the same vehicle, with one obvious difference: longer wheelbase. The Unlimited, or LJs, have 10 inches of extra wheelbase, resulting in a little bit more cargo room. They also come standard with the factory-installed Dana 44 rear axle with 373 gears. Now, they've only made these Unlimiteds between 2004 and 2006. Luckily for us, ours is almost completely stock, save for a few upgrades, like these Bushwhacker flares, aftermarket front lower control arms, and for some reason, this transfer case lowering kit. Now, normally, these are installed to deal with driveline vibrations once a lift kit's been installed, but that's obviously not the case with this Jeep. We'll have to fix that. Now, underneath the hood, we've got the same torquey and reliable 4-liter straight six that's found underneath the hood of, I don't know, about 1 trillion other Wranglers, Grand Cherokees, and Cherokees, and there's no need to change it. Now, as far as we can tell, this one's all stock, except for the cold air intake and throttle body spacer. Now, it's backed up by a 4-speed electronically controlled automatic transmission and a new process 231 transfer case. But before we start wrenching on this thing, we want to take some measurements. Now, here at the body, we've got just 19 inches at the rocker. Now, an even more interesting measurement is the ground clearance to the transfer case skid plate. We've got a paltry 8 inches or so. This thing must have had a lift kit on it at one time. Now, on the short trip from the parking lot into the shop here, we noticed that this Jeep kind of had a rough and bouncy ride. And like we said before, this thing probably had a lift kit on it at one time. And well, we're certain of that now. These front coil springs, they've got replacement tags on them, and they're kind of shinier than the rest of the parts. So somebody just recently swapped them out. One thing they didn't swap out was these bump stop extensions. They're hovering above the spring pad with about a 1/4 inch air gap, meaning this Jeep has virtually no up travel, thus the rough ride. So if you're buying a used vehicle, caveat emptor, or buyer beware. We start the teardown by removing the parts that limit the axle down travel so we can remove the springs. That means the shocks go away along with the sway bar end links and the track bar. Now, we're not hitting these things because we like to smack things with hammers. It removes or dislodges the tapered stud that's holding these things in place. And with that stuff out of the way, we could wrestle our kind of new coil springs out of the way. Along with this out-of-place bump stop.
Now, when you're using a Pitman arm puller, it can store up a little bit of energy. And when it lets go, it might surprise you.
Now, the stamped steel upper control arms are going to hit the scrap pile, but we don't have to mess around with the brackets that are welded to the frame. They're not going to interfere with any of our upgrade parts, unlike the lower control arm brackets. These must be removed to make room for the new long arms. Now, we are using a plasma cutter to try to get these brackets removed, but there's a myriad of ways you can get this done. hacksaw, die grinder, plasma cutter, torch, you name it. You've got options, and we'll probably try a few of those out. With clean frame rails, we can move on to removing the factory transfer case skid plate. Trash. Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Well, we've got our Wrangler Unlimited, or LJ's, front suspension completely disassembled, and we've even got the control arm brackets cut from the frame. We ground them down flush and hit them with a coat of duplicolored paint. And we're just about ready to start installing some parts. And here's the kit we're going to use. This is a long travel, long arm kit that we picked up from Rusty's Off-Road. It includes a pair of heavy-duty long arm mounting brackets that saddle the frame, a heavy-duty belly skid, 4 individual control arms for the rear suspension, and 2 radius arms for the front suspension. We've also got some sway bar disconnect or end links, a drop pitman arm, a pair of replacement track bars for the front and rear, along with some extended length stainless steel brake lines that we're gonna need. We also picked up 4 springs and shocks. Now, during disassembly, we ran into a problem that's kind of common, whether it be a Wrangler or any other framed vehicle. We had a captured nut break loose on the inside of the frame rail. And since it's fully boxed, there's no really easy way to get to it. But you've got a couple of options and a couple of solutions depending on how many tools are in your arsenal. What you could do is come in here with a cutoff wheel and create a little access window. So to give you enough room so you could sneak in a wrench and a nut, and when you're reassembling everything, you can just nut and bolt it. But we've got a more permanent solution. Now, the first thing we're doing is marking some crosshairs on the original stripped out frame nut. That way the replacement hardware can go back in the same exact spot. After all, it's got to line up with the existing transfer case skid plate mounting holes. Now, this is simply a metric nut that matches the threads of the rest of the hardware and a washer. The washer is going to serve 2 purposes. It allows us to tack weld the nut in place, and it mimics the spacing of the factory transfer case hardware. We'll lock it down and make sure it doesn't go anywhere with about 1,000 tack welds. After that, we'll grind it flush so everything sits nice and smooth and hit it with a coat of paint. And now we can start installing some parts. And that starts with these front and rear control arm mounting brackets that saddle the frame. Now we're just holding them up in place temporarily so we can mark some holes that need to be drilled.
With the holes clearly marked, it's just a matter of drilling, which is not very much fun. However, it's necessary. And by the way, do one side at a time. Resist the urge to drill through both sides with one long bit. It always seems to come out on the wrong spot on the other side.
And with the brackets firmly installed, we can start hanging the long arms. Now, when we ordered our long travel kit, we asked Rusty if he would swap out the standard 5.5-inch lift springs in favor of some shorter 3-inch springs and matching shocks. Because we're only going to be running 35s, and we do have bushwhacker flares. Now, typically, before we would install the coil springs, we'd be adding our bump stop extensions. But we're going to go a little bit different route with this build and use these Daystar Stinger bump stops. Now, these are similar to the hydraulic bump stops or air bumps that are available, but these are a little bit different. They use inserts of different durometers so you can fine-tune the bump stop spring rate. Now, for mounting, you've got a couple of different options. You can use the standard canister style mount typically found in the off-road world, or you can do like we're going to do. Take the end cap off the bump stop and replace it with this weld-on cap. It'll go right in place of a traditional bump stop. But before we install these, we got to finish up the suspension installation, add the tires and wheels, set this thing on the ground and flex it out and determine where we want to limit our axle travel.
Now check this out. This is where the previous owner has re-drilled to relocate the track bar to accommodate for a lift kit. There's a 1/16 of an inch of metal here. Now that is weak. Should the wrong thing happen on or off-road, that breaks, you've completely lost control of your suspension. This track bar locates it laterally, and you need a little more strength there. Now, the Rusty's track bar is adjustable and locates into the factory position. However, you don't want to do that right now. You want to make sure the vehicle is sitting on its own weight on the suspension. That way you can accurately center your axle. So this stays right here for now.
Now the kit also includes the correct length drop pitman arm that will make sure our steering angles stay within the correct range. And don't forget your cotter pins on all steering linkage hardware. We're also adding sway bar end links that we can disconnect at the trailhead to allow the front axle and front suspension to articulate much more freely.
Hey guys, welcome back to Trucks, where today's project is installing a long arm suspension system from Rusty's Off-Road Products on our Wrangler Unlimited. And with the front out of the way, well, the back's a piece of cake.
Further evidence of a prior lift kit installation is this rear track bar relocation bracket. It's going away and it's not going to be reused.
Just in case you don't have a plasma cutter, here's a way to remove these mounts and take advantage of the ultra-tiny conservative welds that the factory puts on. Basically, all you do is cut about 3/4 of the way through the weld and use some adjustable pliers to work the metal until it fatigues. You can clearly see that there's no heat distortion. You're left with an almost clean frame rail that requires very little cleanup. A couple of passes with a flap wheel and you're good to go, ready for paint, and you're never going to know that there was a mount there in the first place.
The rear control arms share a pivot point and a mounting bolt. The upper control arms simply bolt into the factory upper control arm mounting bracket at the axle. Now the upper arms have flex joints at both ends, but the lower arm has a flex joint at one end and a rubber OE type bushing at the axle end. And that will limit the amount of road noise and vibration that's transmitted into the body. We also installed our new rear sway bar end links that are longer and these shock mounting bracket extensions. They'll keep the shock body from coming in contact with any of the axle brackets as the suspension cycles.
All right, now just like up front, we've got a beefed up adjustable track bar for the rear suspension, which gets installed with the vehicle weight on the suspension so you can properly center the axle. The good thing about a lift system like this is there's tons of room to get underneath it and work. Now at the start of the show, this is what we started with. Wow, what a huge difference we've made in the appearance of this vehicle, not to mention the off-road capabilities. But let's take a look at the real impact we've made. Wow, we've now got 25 inches at the bottom of the rocker panel. That's a difference of 6 inches. But keep in mind, just like any brand new suspension system, that's not accurate. It's got to settle, and it will settle. But there's another more important measurement we want to show you. Now, to quote Ryan, we had a paltry 8 inches of ground clearance when we started. And now, we've got 15.5 inches of ground clearance between the Rusty's skid plate and the floor. So we've effectively doubled our middle ground clearance with the Rusty's system. Not to mention that, what a great looking Jeep.